Welcome back to Indistinct Chatter. I'm your host, Eliza, and once again, I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so grateful that you're listening and allowing me to grow into this new venture. I'm already starting to feel more excited than anxious. Still very anxious, but more and more excited about this podcast. And I'm honestly just so happy to have an outlet and a hobby other than binging TV shows or building dream homes in The Sims. I mean, I still love doing those things and I'll continue to do those things, but this is fun too. So thank you again for being here. It's the topic all over social media. So I'm going to ask, have you seen the newest season of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives? Because I have. I was pretty much glued to the new season most of the weekend. I just find the entire concept of mom talk in the show so interesting. These women are so multidimensional, and adding a reality show to it is just super fascinating. I don't even really care that much for reality TV normally. There are a couple reality shows that I enjoy. They're kind of like comfort shows, but I think these women bring more than just wealthy people with a reality show, you know? They all have such different backgrounds in terms of traumas, families, relationships, but they have this common thread of their religion, whether they're still active members of the church or not. And they're all mothers who wanted an outlet while creating meaningful connections with other women and something that can provide for themselves and their families. They wanted to be more than just whatever someone thinks they should be, you know? The show, I think, does a great job exploring complexities of their religion and how it relates to their upbringings and identities as they're growing. Even the dads. I mean, the women are definitely supreme here, but I've enjoyed watching these men grow and seeing both the men and women break stereotypes. Plus, they're all open about some pretty dark personal traumas. And no matter your stance on reality TV, it's commendable. I think they're opening doors for a lot of people to be more open about things they felt ashamed about or maybe didn't know was wrong when it was happening, whether whether they're the victim or they were not the victim, the predator, however you want to word it. And I feel like at the end of season 3, we're seeing that a show, specifically a reality show, doesn't need someone flipping tables every other episode or getting into screaming matches to still hold our attention and make it our main topic of discussion for weeks later. I kind of want to do a deep dive into the show at some point, but I don't know if that's something anyone is interested in. If so, please let me know because I really only have one other friend to talk to about this show, so I'd love to talk about it more. On the topic of TV, I wasn't going to get into this, but I can't help it. Football. The NFL. I'm not a huge sports girly by any means. I don't die for any team, but I have always enjoyed having football on, whether I'm watching or just have it on in the background. It's very cozy and nostalgic. I had even done the whole fantasy league before, and not to brag, but I got second place the first time I did it. It was the only time I did it, though, because it has become so freaking expensive to just watch one season of football. Even if you just wanted to watch, like, just your team, like the Green Bay Packers, for example, it's ridiculously expensive. To catch every single Packers game this season, you would need at least 2 or 3 streaming services. You need YouTube TV at around $83 a month, Amazon Prime Video for $15 a month, and that's just for the one Thursday night football game every week. And if you're not in Wisconsin, you'd also need NFL Sunday Ticket for another $349 for the season. That's like $300 to $400 just to watch one team play for a few months. And if you wanted to watch every NFL game to be able to participate actively in a fantasy league, forget about it. You would need YouTube TV, NFL Sunday Ticket, Amazon Prime, Peacock, Netflix for the Christmas Day game, ESPN streaming, and Paramount Plus. All in, you're looking at anywhere from $750 to over $900 just for one season. Back to Thursday Night Football and the Christmas games, you have to have Prime and Netflix to watch those. There's no other way around it. Actually, for the Christmas games, if you live in the local market of the competing teams, then you can watch it on your local CBS affiliate station. But if you don't live in those cities, you have to have Netflix. And that's a problem. The NFL has completely fragmented the viewing experience across multiple platforms. This year alone, there are 20 regular season games that are exclusive to streaming services. Amazon alone hosts 15 Thursday Night Football games and the Black Friday game. No cable, no over-the-air broadcast. You either pay for that specific streaming service or you miss the game. Like many people these days, especially my generation, I don't have cable. But what I do have is multiple streaming services, and I still don't have enough to watch just one season of football. Now, here's what really gets me. Let me take you back, all the way back to the good old days, and I'm using air quotes here, of cable TV. Back in 2015, the average bill was about $103 a month. This is per Google, so I don't know how accurate that is for everyone, but that's the average. That's it. One bill. And with that one cable package, you got CBS, Fox, NBC, ABC, ESPN, and the NFL Network. You could watch virtually every NFL game. If you wanted all the out-of-market games, you'd probably have to add the NFL Sunday Ticket through DirecTV, but for most fans who just wanted to watch their local team and the primetime games, one cable bill covered it all. Fast forward to today, and we're paying significantly more for a worse experience. Instead of a $103 monthly bill, cord cutters are now juggling 6 or 7 different streaming subscriptions, each with their own login, their own app, their own quirks. And if you add it all up, you're spending way more than that old cable bill ever cost, potentially double or triple just to watch the same amount of football. The streaming services promised us freedom from cable bundles. They promised us choice. They promised us lower costs. Instead, what we got is cable TV all over again, just more fragmented and more expensive. The NFL knew exactly what they were doing when they signed that $110 billion media rights deal. Yes, you heard that right. $110 billion over 11 years. They split the games across as many platforms as possible to maximize their revenue, and we are the ones footing the bill. And let's talk real quick about just how profitable this is for the NFL. In 2024, the league generated over $23 billion in revenue. Again, billion with a B. To put that in perspective, the NBA made about $12 billion, and Major League Baseball brought in about $14 billion. The NFL isn't just the most profitable sports league in America. It's literally 74% more profitable than MLB, and the gap between NFL and every other sports keeps growing. The average NFL team made $151 million in profit last season. That's pure profit after paying players, staff, and all expenses. Meanwhile, each team received $433 million from the league just for existing before selling a single ticket, beer, brat, whatever. Commissioner Roger Goodell set a goal back in 2010 to reach $25 billion in annual revenue by 2027. And at that time, people thought he was delulu. Well, They're basically already there. And they got there by doing exactly what they're doing right now, spreading games across as many platforms as possible and making us pay for all of them. So, yeah, I stopped playing fantasy football. Not because I wasn't good at it. Remember, I got second place. It's a little braggy, isn't it? But because I literally can't afford to watch enough games to keep up anymore. And that's the reality for millions of fans. Football has become a luxury sport to watch. And to me, that's just wrong. Straight up wrong. Okay, sorry about that. I kind of went off on a tangent there. So let's move on to what I actually came here to talk about. I heard the term infantilize the other day. And if you're not sure what that is, it basically means to treat someone as a child or in a way which denies their maturity in age or experience. According to Merriam-Webster, the word infantilize is just a baby, linguistically speaking. Social scientists didn't even start using the term until several decades into the 20th century to discuss the ways in which treating humans as helpless can prolong or encourage their dependency on others. And studies have shown that an individual, when infantilized, is more likely to feel disrespected. They might feel a sense of transgression or even start to feel dehumanized. I heard it in the context of romantic relationships, but my self-conscious brain instantly thought about how I am with my parents. I This is so embarrassing. I track their locations. Um and to be fair, they see my location too, but I share my location in case I get like snatched up or lost in the woods or something. I preach certain health things to them, like trying meatless Mondays, nagging them to get helmets for their bike rides, etc., etc. And I thought to myself, do I infantilize my mom and dad? I started then to wonder, will everyone infantilize their parents? Does it depend on your age, your parents' age, your gender, your birth order? What if you're an only child? Does it begin because of an event, a scare, a move, or is it human instinct hardwired in us? Is it only applied to parents and their kids? So, of course, I did a little digging, and not everyone experiences it, but it is extremely common. In terms of infantilizing parents, it's especially common among adult children who have moved away from home or witnessed their parents' first serious health scare, or if they're an only child. Ding, ding, ding for me. I moved from Wisconsin to Oregon during the height of the pandemic, and it was my first time I couldn't just see my parents whenever I wanted to. It was the first time I felt homesick. Plus, during the pandemic, I was worried my parents wouldn't take things seriously and do what I thought they should do to stay safe. Plus, since moving away, my parents have experienced some health scares that worry me, and I'm also an only child, so I don't have someone to share these worries with, you know? A lot of reasoning for infantilizing your parents is anxiety fueled. Maybe there's distance anxiety. You have a physical separation causing voids that you fill with your own imagination. And if your imagination is like mine, it gets dark. Cognitive biases, like if your parent or parents had a health scare and now you can't stop thinking of the absolute worst outcomes. It can have something to do with your attachment patterns too. Maybe you learned to manage separation as a threat when you were a kid. Now, upon my research, I am happy to report that I have self diagnosed myself as a non infantilizer. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now. Tracking my parents' location is not infantilizing them. There's a difference between protective concern and infantilization. The line is whether you're treating them as incapable of making their own decisions or managing their own lives. Therefore, it turns out, I'm not infantilizing them. I'm just an anxious wreck about not being there sometimes. But in my sleuthing, I did learn that infantilizing can actually apply to more than just parent child relationships. It can apply to the elderly, youth, race, gender, disability, intimate partner violence, and even property law. So I'm going to talk about it. All right, come along on this journey. With the elderly, it seems pretty obvious, right? We often see an older person and subconsciously try to be helpful. We open their doors, pick things up if they dropped something. We help with their household chores like mowing lawns, raking leaves, cleaning gutters, all that fun stuff. Now, offering help when asked or needed is not infantilization. But when we assume someone can't do something simply because of their age and not considering their actual abilities, or when we insist on helping even after they've declined, that's when we cross into infantilizing territory. It's the assumption of incompetence that's the problem, not the act of helping. My first eye opening experience with infantilization was when we'd visit someone at the nursing home. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know what infantilization was, but I noticed nurses would speak to these grown ass adults in baby talk, goo goo gaga. These people have done and seen so much more than we have in their lives, mind you. And these nurses would dumb things down as if this 90-year-old man couldn't possibly comprehend or understand the complexities of life or anything for that matter. Doors wouldn't lock on their rooms or even shut during the day. Eating and sleeping hours were strict. And this is going to piss me off. Don't even get me started. I'm getting started. Some of these homes still force residents to sit in wheelchairs all day, even if they can walk. And then on top of that, they attach them to the wheelchair. And if the resident stands up or disconnects that attachment, an alarm goes off as if they're in prison or the pound, and not like adults who simply need some extra care in some capacity. Of course, obviously, I understand that with dementia and situations like that, we want to be mindful that they are monitored and their location is known, but I feel like there's a line that easily gets crossed, and that's when residents start to lose all autonomy over their lives. They don't get to choose what or when to eat, sleep, bathe, go outside, or even to speak with family and friends outside of the home. And honestly, the list goes on. Have you seen the movie I Care a Lot? It came out in 2020, and it's about a woman who makes her living by becoming the legal guardian of elderly people. Basically, she takes control of their lives and their money. She gets a judge to declare them incompetent, becomes their guardian, moves them into care facilities against their will, sells their houses and possessions, and drains their bank accounts. And she does this all legally. I don't know why I said it like that. While the movie is an exaggerated thriller, the core of it is real. This actually happens. It's called predatory guardianship. Someone petitions a court to declare an elderly person incapable of managing their own affairs. They get appointed as their legal guardian, and suddenly the elderly person has no rights. They can't make their own medical decisions. They can't access their own money. They can't even be the decider of where they live. They're legally classified as incompetent, like a child. The guardian system is supposed to protect vulnerable elderly people, but when it's abused, it's pure infantilization for profit. You can't take care of yourself anymore, so I'll take care of you. And then everything you own disappears. I highly recommend the movie. It will infuriate you, but at least in this movie, there's a happy ending. And Peter Dinklage is in it. We love him. Also, Diane Wiest, if you're an Edward Scissorhands girly or Practical Magic fan. And yes, she's in the upcoming second one. And obviously, some people really do need guardians. Dementia is real, cognitive decline happens. There are situations where someone genuinely can't make safe decisions for themselves anymore. The problem is when the system gets abused, when financial motives override genuine care, or when we assume incompetence based on age alone rather than actual ability. It's about protecting people who need protection without stripping autonomy from people who don't. This can actually lead to a reduced quality of care and life. The baby talk used towards elders that I mentioned earlier is called elderspeak, and it's directly linked to resistance to care in nursing home residents with dementia. Residents exposed to this elderspeak are more than twice as likely to exhibit behaviors such as turning away, crying, screaming, becoming less social, and saying no more often. And research has shown that when nursing home staff reduced their use of elderspeak by about 20%, resistance to care dropped by about that same amount. I know I've seen it. I've seen someone go into a nursing home and so quickly their whole personality changes. And honestly, their will to live declines. And it's usually at these homes where the residents are being infantilized. They're aging. They're not dumb or incapable just because they're older. And treating them like that is so disrespectful and diminishes their lives and everything they've accomplished. If we're lucky, we'll get old too. How would you feel? It terrifies me. On the flip side, it's not surprising that youth are also infantilized. Often, this term is used towards teens and their underestimated potential in modern society. It's also used to describe adolescents being regarded as though they're younger than their actual age. Robert Epstein, I know, not that Epstein. It's an unfortunate coincidence of a name, but Robert Epstein is a notable critic of the treatment of youth and adolescents. He's a psychologist, professor, author, and journalist. And among a million other noteworthy things, he's also the co founder of National Youth Rights Day and the author of The Case Against Adolescence. He's critical of what he sees as the quote, artificial extension of childhood and sees it more as a social construct. You've heard of teen brain, maybe? Well, Robert believes this is a result of infantilization rather than a set of brain characteristics that are standard to all humans throughout our teen years. Studies have found that teens are in some ways more developmentally mature than most adults, and Robert advocates giving young people more responsibility. In fact, he argues that brains change throughout the lifespan, and we are most able to reason clearly in our teens. Definitely not how I remember being spoken to or about as a teen. Now, to be clear, recognizing that teenagers are more capable than we give them credit for is not the same as saying they should be treated like full adults in every context, especially when it comes to relationships with adults. There are still massive power imbalances between teens and adults, and what Epstein is talking about is things like let teens work, let them have more autonomy in their education, trust their decision-making abilities, don't dismiss their opinions just because of their age. He's not saying that there shouldn't be any protection for young people. It's about not underestimating their competence while still acknowledging they're in a different stage than adults. The point is, teens aren't incompetent children who need to be controlled at every turn. But they also shouldn't be adultified or put in situations where adults exploit them. It's about balance and respect, not swinging to either extreme. You got it? Disabled individuals are often infantilized during interactions with able-bodied or neurotypical people. Again, like with our elders, you might think you're being helpful, but it can and often does deny individuals their autonomy. It happens most commonly toward folks who are visually impaired, as well as those with autism, which is often seen as a children's disorder. Now, I need to be really careful here because disability is not a one-size-fits-all. Some disabled people do need support with certain tasks. Some autistic people do need assistance with specific things. The issue isn't offering help, it's assuming incompetence across the board. It's talking to a wheelchair user like they're 5 years old when they're a fully capable adult. It's assuming someone who's nonverbal can't understand you. It's treating autism like it disappears at age 18. The problem is assumption, not acknowledging that people might need support. And I bring up the autism disappearing at age 18 thing because many autism organizations are run by neurotypical parents of autistic children, and most charities dedicated to autism tend to focus on children specifically. This hyper focus on children essentially denies the existence of autistic adults with public consciousness and can lead to subconsciously discriminating against autistic adults. Infantilization can also occur as an aspect of intimate partner violence. Some partners will substitute physical violence for psychological abuse in order to maintain their power, and sometimes it's in addition to physical violence as well. This power imbalance is deliberately created and maintained by the abuser. Typically, the abuser undermines the victim's autonomy. They position themselves as the quote responsible adult, and they make the majority of the decisions in the relationship. Like controlling finances by saying, "You're bad with money," that type of shit. They often erode all self confidence by making the victim seem incapable of making decisions, which then makes the victim doubt their own judgment and abilities. The abuser then creates dependency, making their victims start to believe they need their abuser to function because they're made to believe that they can't handle adult responsibilities. Sometimes this is under the guise of being protective or keeping you safe, and they'll justify their control by saying, "I'm just taking care of you because you can't do it yourself," or some shit like that. Like Topper in Outer Banks, when he continuously says to Sarah, "Sorry, I guess I just love you. Sorry, I care. Sorry, I want to make sure you're safe," when really he's just being a jealous, controlling freak. Anyway, it's harder to identify than physical violence. From the outside, it can be seen as the abuser just caring, but really they're gaslighting and infantilizing and abusing their partner. When it comes to race, infantilization was a concept that was pivotal in maintaining slavery and plays a huge role in implicit bias today. I don't even want to say this, but during slavery, Africans were once considered, quote, child races. Yep. The fuck, right? They were literally viewed as perpetual children incapable of self governance or complex thought, and this was a deliberate tool of subjugation. Infantilization justified the entire system. It positioned enslavers as caretakers and denied the value of Black people's labor and contributions. It stripped away all autonomy, and this still persists today. Black adults face condescending communication, dismissed expertise, and are treated as if they need management or saving rather than deserving respect. Then you add the economy, right? Infantilize a population and you justify paying them less, excluding them from leadership, and dismissing their work. And here's where it gets more fucked up. Black children often experience adultification while at the same time Black adults face infantilization. Black kids are often seen and treated as older, so they're held to harsher punishments and higher standards. Then, as adults, they're infantilized and treated as less competent. They're denied childhood as children, then denied full adulthood as adults. Both serve the same purpose, and that's to control and deny full humanity. All that to say, this is racism. This is still racism. I just want to make sure you understand that fully. Infantilization is not a word you can use to excuse racism or in place of it because it is racism in this context. And Native Americans, their infantilization was literally written into federal law. In 1831, the Supreme Court ruled in Cherokee Nation v. Georgia that Native tribes were, quote, domestic dependent nations whose relationship to the U.S. resembles that of a ward to a guardian. A ward to a guardian, like a child to a parent, a slave to a keeper. Even after Native Americans became U.S. citizens in 1924, you heard that right. People born here before we got here had to wait until the 1900s to become citizens of their own land. Many states still prevented them from voting by claiming they were incompetent and wards of the state. These are full adults denied the right to vote because the government legally classified them as needing guardianship. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, Native Americans living on reservations had to get permission from the government before they could leave the reservation. Not just to move or do anything crazy. Even if they were to move, they shouldn't have to ask for permission, but they had to ask for permission just to visit family, to hunt, to travel. And again, these are adults. They're adults that were here before us, and they're needing permission slips like school children. Whether it's enslaved Africans called child races or Native Americans being declared legal wards, the pattern is the same. Use infantilization to justify control, to strip away rights, and to deny full humanity. Now, this one is a little controversial, maybe, but referring to adult women as girls is technically infantilizing women. I say this is controversial because even I call other women my age girl, and I'm not meaning it in a negative or less than a woman type of way. But in my research, girl is a term that is inherently infantilizing due to its association with children. And here's something wild I learned. Infantilizing behavior is actually recognized as one of the dimensions of sexual harassment in workplace research. It's not just about unwanted sexual advances. Harassment also includes things like patronizing language, being treated as less competent because of your gender, having your expertise dismissed, or being talked down to in ways that male colleagues aren't. Infantilization fits right into that pattern. When you treat women like children in professional settings, you're creating a hostile work environment, even if there's nothing explicitly sexual about it. And look, I'm not saying you're a bad person if you call your friends girls or say girls' night. I do it too. Context and intent matter here. When I say, hey girl, to my friend, that's not the same as a man in a business meeting referring to his female colleagues as the girls in the office while calling the men by their names. It's about power dynamics and respect. The problem is when girl is used to diminish us. In professional settings, in contexts when men would never be called boys, or when it's deliberately used to make us seem less serious or less competent. It's worth thinking about, not necessarily worth policing every casual conversation, but maybe just toss that in the back of your mind somewhere and think about that. When a woman is referred to as a girl in those contexts, it can be used to make us smaller. It denies our maturity, our adulthood. It subconsciously reinforces external and internalized biases about what women are capable of and how much they should be taken seriously. This can manifest in oversimplifying explanations, aka mansplaining, using demeaning nicknames, and also physically, like offering a woman a hug but offering a man a handshake. Infantilizing women also often leads to policing our appearances and which social spheres we're allowed to be in. While researching, I also found that in ancient Greece, society endorsed pederasty. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's sexual activity involving a man and a boy. In Greek society, there was a hierarchy based on who penetrated and who was penetrated, aka the dominant and the submissive. The dominant role was reserved for adult male citizens, while the submissive role was occupied by everyone else, young boys, women, and slaves. Young boys in these relationships, typically ages 12 to 16, occupied the same subordinate social position as adult women. Both were treated as passive, as receivers rather than participants, and as people who needed to be guided and controlled by adult men. Essentially, both young boys and grown women were denied full personhood and agency in the same ways. This wasn't necessarily about Greeks thinking women and boys were identical. It was more so about power. It was about who got to make decisions and who had decisions made for them. And the fact that adult women were placed in the same category as adolescent boys reveals everything about how women are viewed as perpetually immature, never quite capable of the full reasoning and autonomy granted to adult men. This comparison of women to young boys was rooted in the belief that women were weaker and less developed than men. This is prevalent in society. It always has been through centuries, and it's contributed toward the infantilization of women. Because if a woman is not as developed as a man, then she doesn't deserve the dignity of free will. She doesn't deserve the same levels of education or respect. She doesn't deserve power, and she should be delicately watched over and reined in like a child. And this infantilization of women doesn't just affect how we're spoken to or what jobs we can have, it results in the policing of our bodies and autonomy. When women are denied access to comprehensive reproductive health care, or when our pain is dismissed by doctors who don't believe our symptoms, or when we're told what we can and cannot wear for your own protection, that's infantilization. We are being treated as if we can't be trusted to make decisions about our own bodies, our own health, our own lives, like children who need someone else to decide what's best for them. Our society systemically equates femininity with things like vulnerability, submission, uncertainty, and childhood. Basically, to be a woman today is to be infantile. Women are conditioned to appear younger than they are, appear weaker, less intelligent, physically smaller, and overall inferior to men. Okay, I got a little heated there. I've been getting heated a lot in this episode, so thanks for hanging on. Now, in property law, infantilization refers to the restriction of an individual's or group's autonomy based on the failure to recognize and respect their full capacity to reason. Once this is combined with property takeover, it's referred to as dignity taking, which is the destruction or confiscation of property rights from owners or occupiers. Basically, intentionally or unintentionally, the outcome results in dehumanization. I'll give you some examples of how this still happens today. First, there's what happened and is still happening today to Native Americans. Remember how I mentioned that in 1831, the Supreme Court declared Native tribes as wards of the U.S., like children needing guardians? That wasn't just about controlling people. Can you guess what it was about? You got it. It was about taking their land. The court ruled that Native people didn't actually own their land. They were just occupants. The U.S. claimed ultimate dominion over all Native land. Translation: you're like children, you can't manage your own property, so we will manage it for you. And then they took it, snatched it right up. To this day, the federal government holds Native tribal lands in trust. This means tribes don't actually own their own land outright. The government manages it for them, like a parent managing a child's inheritance. This makes it nearly impossible for tribes to use their land as collateral for loans, to develop it economically, or to make decisions about their own resources without government approval. The Massachusetts Enfranchisement Act of 1869 is a perfect example. It granted Native people citizenship rights. That sounds good, right? Well, it eliminated reservations' special legal status and forced the division and sale of thousands of acres of communal tribal land. I just want to apologize quick because I am not great at pronouncing Native American names, but the Chappaquiddick Wampanoag once inhabited an entire island, but by 1788, they'd been pushed onto 1/5 of it. After the 1869 Act, even that was divided and sold off. They call it enfranchisement, giving people rights, but what it actually did was break up Native communities and transfer their land to white settlers. And it's not just Native Americans. It's called heirs property, and it's one of the leading causes of Black land loss in America. And here's how it works. When Black families passed down land without formal wills, often because they didn't trust legal systems that had historically excluded them, the property then became heirs property. This means multiple family members own fractional shares of the land, and with each generation, the number of owners multiplies. Predatory developers exploit this. They find one heir willing to sell their tiny fraction of the property, buy it for cheap, then use the courts to force a partition sale, meaning the entire property gets auctioned off, usually below market value. The developers profit massively, and then the families lose land that's been theirs for generations. Between 1910 and 1997, Black Americans lost 90% of their farmland this way. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has called heirs property the, quote, leading cause of Black involuntary land loss. We're talking about land valued in the billions, with a B, like big money, baby, stolen through legal loopholes. And it's still happening in modern times. In 2023, a 93-year-old woman named Josephine Wright in South Carolina fought off a developer trying to force her off land that her family had owned since right after the Civil War. The developers wanted to build a luxury subdivision, aka a modern trailer park. And as recently as 2024, New York State had to strengthen its laws after investigations exposed how speculators were using these exact tactics to rip off Black families in the Bronx. Why does this work, you may wonder? Because the system treats these families as incapable of managing their own land. Banks won't give them loans because the titles are unclear. They can't get disaster relief. They're shut out of farming programs. They're essentially told, you can't handle this land properly the way we think it should be handled, so we will handle it for you. And then it's just taken away. But this isn't new. This same logic of treating people as incapable of managing their own affairs has been used to take property for a long, long time. Take women owning property for another example. We basically weren't allowed to do it independently of a man until the 70s, dude. I mean, to be fair, there were different acts and regulations that sort of allowed women to own property in the 1830s, 40s, but it wasn't until the Equal Credit Opportunity Act in 1974 that women could get credit and loans without a male cosigner to be able to buy, own, and control land all on their own without a husband or a man. That's only 51 years ago. Our grandmas might have been denied a mortgage without a male cosigner. And again, women could technically own property before 1974, but banks treated them as incapable of managing their own finances. They needed a man's signature. Banks were literally telling women, you can't be trusted to make adult financial decisions on your own just because you're a woman. And women are infants, remember? Here's what connects all of this. When you infantilize someone, when you treat them as incapable, as needing supervision, as not fully competent, you start to justify taking things from them. Their property, their autonomy, their power. I keep saying it, but the whole you can't handle this, so I'll handle it for you type shit. Whether it's a bank saying a woman needs her husband's signature, or predatory developers overwhelming Black families with legal paperwork to steal their land, or the Supreme Court declaring Native tribes wards so the government can claim their territory, or guardians draining elderly people's bank accounts, or an abuser telling their partner, I'm just taking care of you, or nursing homes treating elderly residents like prisoners. All of it, it's all rooted in the same thing, treating competent people like they can't manage their own lives. The difference is intent and power. So for me, tracking my parents' location and suggesting some healthy lifestyle changes here and there, I'm not trying to take anything from them. But historically, infantilization has been weaponized against women, against Black people, Native Americans, the elderly, disabled people. all to justify stripping away rights, property, and dignity. And that's what makes it so insidious. It masquerades as care, as protection, as helping, when really it's about control. So, where's the line? When does concern become infantilization? I think it's when you start making decisions for someone instead of with them, when you assume incompetence instead of asking, when your anxiety about someone becomes more important than their autonomy. My parents are competent. They ultimately make good decisions. My worry isn't about them, it's about me not being there. And that's something I need to sit with, because the moment I start treating them like they can't handle their own lives, that's when I've crossed the line, and I am not about that. Anyway, I hope this episode got you thinking about how we treat people and maybe even how you're treated. If nothing else, at least you now have a fancy word to throw around when someone is being condescending. Actually, you're infantilizing me right now. Instant conversation killer. You're welcome. But seriously, if you see it happening, maybe say something. If you catch yourself doing it, check yourself. And if someone has been doing this to you and you couldn't quite put your finger on what felt so off about it, now you know. And knowing is half the battle, or whatever G.I. Joe says. All right, that is it for today's episode. Thanks for hanging with me and listening to me get a little too carried away, maybe a little too passionate about everything. If you want to hear more unhinged rants, historical deep dives, or apparently NFL streaming shit, subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and come back next Tuesday. I'll be here overthinking something, maybe more reality TV. Who's to say? Maybe Vine, since it's coming back and not allowing AI. So exciting. We'll chat next week. Thanks so much. Love ya. Love you. Bye.